In the shadowed annals of human history, few rulers have etched a legacy so indelibly stained with depravity as Tiberius Caesar Augustus, the second emperor of Rome. What dawned as the steady hand of a battle-hardened military commander spiraled inexorably into a grotesque nightmare of perversion that would horrify even the most jaded souls of his era. The whispers that slithered from his self-exiled lair on the sun-drenched island of Capri conjure a vision so profoundly unsettling that scholars across centuries have wrestled with their plausibility. Yet the unyielding echo of ancient chronicles, especially those penned by the unflinching Suetonius and Tacitus, hints at a festering shadow lurking behind the gleaming marble facades of imperial might, a darkness so profound it mocks the very edges of understanding. Tonight, we plunge headlong into the yawning chasm of one man's unraveling corruption, where absolute power didn't merely corrupt absolutely, it forged a ravenous monster whose hungers devoured all limits. When Tiberius donned the imperial purple in 14 AD, Rome exhaled a collective breath of cautious hope. Before them stood a warrior of unassailable valor, a strategist who had fortified the empire's rugged northern frontiers and proven his mettle in the gritty halls of administration. As Augustus's adopted heir, he appeared the flawless torchbearer for the Julio-Claudian line. But beneath the rigid mask of this somber, somewhat unwilling sovereign, shadowy undercurrents were already churning like storm clouds on the horizon. His formative years had been scarred by raw, personal agonies, the gut-wrenching loss of his cherished brother Drusus, a coerced severance from his devoted first wife Agrippina, and a barren union thrust upon him with Julia, Augustus's scandal-plagued, insatiable daughter. These raw gashes burrowed deep into Tiberius's spirit, breeding fissures that would one day erupt like fissures in parched earth. The metamorphosis unfolded not in a blaze, but in insidious layers. For the opening decade of his rule, Tiberius steered the realm with a measured competence, upholding Augustus's blueprint and anchoring the vast empire in uneasy equilibrium. He hoarded the public coffers with iron frugality, shunned pointless conquests, and at first paid deference to the Senate's ancient gravitas. Yet those who peered into his guarded world sensed a creeping venom, a sharpening cynicism that coiled tighter with every fleeting season. The poisoned demise of his son Drusus in 23 AD shattered something irrevocable within him. Devastated and spiraling into suspicion, Tiberius recoiled from the clamor of public gaze. The iron-willed conqueror who had once thundered legions across Germania now cowered from the very masses he commanded, as if their eyes burned like accusatory flames. It was in 26 AD that Tiberius sealed his infamy with a fateful stroke. Abandoning the eternal city's teeming streets, he slunk away to the jagged paradise of Capri, hovering like a sentinel off Naples's azure coast. On the surface, he craved respite from the throne's crushing weight. In truth, he was carving out a shadowed realm where his most voracious demons could roam unleashed. That craggy isle, ringed by sheer cliffs plunging into abyssal depths, transformed into a macabre theater for atrocities that would curdle the blood of battle-scarred legionaries. 12 opulent villas sprang up like gilded traps across its terrain, each a towering testament to indulgence, each veiling horrors that made servants' tongues quiver in hushed dread. Back in Rome, the Senate ground on in hollow ritual, but the true scepter of empire now pulsed from this isolated bastion. Tiberius wielded dominion through icy dread and cryptic missives, his edicts sealing fates with a stroke, his ominous silences dooming souls just as surely. Visitors to Capri staggered back with eyes hollowed by phantoms, if they staggered back at all. The emperor cloaked himself in a cabal of seers, chief among them the malevolent Thrasyllus, whose dire prophecies stoked the fires of his paranoia like bellows on a forge. Every senator morphed into a lurking foe, every furtive murmur swelled into a treasonous plot. The sprawling dominion now bowed to a hermit whose sole dialogues with the world were grim mandates for the headsman's blade. What carved Tiberius apart from the annals parade of despots wasn't raw brutality alone, it was the twisted ingenuity he poured into his indulgences. The ancient scrolls brim with vignettes that claw at the fringes of mortal vileness. His carnal cravings had warped into a leviathan, fixating on the pure and powerless with a predator's gleam. Children, tender boys and girls alike, were ferried to Capri under veils of deception, emerging forever scarred. Some were molded into little fishes, a label that still sends shivers through the spines of those who study it, a grotesque ritual where they darted through his pools, nipping and stroking in underwater obscenities that defy the sunlit world. These poolside abominations were but the overture to deeper symphonies of sin. Suetonius, chronicling from dusty archives and survivor testimonies decades on, unveils staged spectacles of erotic theater that twisted the stage into a chamber of nightmares. Youths were compelled to couple under his leering gaze, often in tangled trios he dubbed little chains, their bodies puppets in his fevered script. He amassed a trove of erotic scrolls and sculptures from the empire's far-flung corners, especially the sensual East, treating them as grim guides to ever-escalating debasements. His private sanctums bloomed with the rawest murals, an unending assault of arousal woven into the very walls. Even the calloused elite who orbited him recoiled from the emperor's feverish inventions in vice. Perhaps the most soul-searing were the spintrii, youthful thralls honed like weapons for forbidden arts. Ripped from loving homes or bartered by parents crushed by want, these innocents knew no schooling save the shadows of seduction. They dwelled in Capri's villas, their fleeting lives chained to slaking the emperor's ever-mutating whims. Some mastered rites so arcane that the Latin tongue faltered to name them, coining shadows where words feared to tread. The very word, spintrii, grew so laced with abomination that it vanished from refined Roman discourse, a ghost too foul to invoke. These young shades held no tomorrow beyond Tiberius's fleeting ecstasy. Countless perished in service, and survivors often met the knife to seal their lips forever. The rot seeped outward from Tiberius like venom from a wound. To sustain his shadowed empire, he craved confederates, and he unearthed them in the ranks of the ruthless and ruined. Ambitious patricians dangled their own kin, siblings or offspring, as grim offerings for favor. Others morphed into hunters, prowling the provinces for unspoiled prey to stoke the imperial blaze. A sordid marketplace of misery bloomed around the court, trading in tender flesh as casually as grain. Dissenters who balked at the abyss or clung to scraps of conscience found themselves branded traitors, their fortunes seized, their bloodlines shattered. Thus, Tiberius wove a web where complicity in his darkness became the grim coin of survival. The tales spilling from Capri ballooned into ever more nightmarish forms with each retelling, like specters feeding on fear. Whispers spoke of suckling infants defiled in their cradles, of chaste noble maidens desecrated in mock sacred rites twisted for the emperor's thrill. One bone-chilling yarn recounts how Tiberius would hurl spent young victims from the island's vertigo-inducing bluffs, with grim sentries posted in the surf below to crush any flicker of life with oars and hooks. Whether every lurid stroke rings true pales against the raw fact that Romans deemed their sovereign capable of such abyssal acts. The mere currency of these legends testifies to the primal terror he unleashed. Beyond the carnal horrors loomed a wider sadism that poisoned every vein of his dominion. Tiberius savored the exquisite torment of the mind, dangling clemency to the doomed only to yank it away in a final, shattering twist. He compelled sires to witness their heirs' slaughter, or worse, wield the blade themselves. One beleaguered senator was herded to feasts and spectacles mere hours after his boy's execution, commanded to grin and gab while anguish clawed his innards raw. Tiberius cloaked these barbarities as loyalty's forge, but raw truth revealed his rapture in witnessing agony's bloom. The boundary between rule and relish had dissolved into oblivion. The treason tribunals morphed into Tiberius's favored lash of dread. A stray syllable, a fleeting scowl, even a twitch of the brow could twist into imperial slander. A swarm of professional snitches, the delators, infested the realm like locusts, fattening on the spoils of their prey. The mere whisper of charges sealed a grave, for Tiberius seldom spared the accused. Torments flowered in inventive savagery to wring false pleas, with the emperor himself sketching fresh hells, like flooding victims with rivers of wine, then binding their manhoods with cords, letting bladder-bursting torment build to a crescendo of screams. The Senate, that once mighty cradle of republican fire, dwindled to a huddle of quaking flatterers. Its members vied in sycophantic frenzy to heap laurels on Tiberius, each outbidding the rest in groveling zeal. They rubber-stamped the doom of peers on whispers thinner than mist, knowing a flicker of pity could paint them next for the pyre. The august assembly that had defied Hannibal's hordes now groveled before one fractured psyche's storm. Some senators chose the hemlock's mercy over the tribunal's maw, preserving at least a shred of estate and honor for their kin. Even the grave offered no sanctuary from his wrath. Tiberius haunted the departed, stripping their legacies and smashing their tombs. Offspring fell for grieving too openly, their tears twisted into sedition. The law bent like a reed into tyranny's blade, dredging forgotten edicts and warping them to feed his frenzy. The charge of maestas, injury to Rome's sacred dignity, swelled to engulf any whim. Men perished for toting Tiberius's graven coins into privies or stews, for scoffing at his boyhood verses, or for seeking oracles on his vitality. The psychic toll on Roman life cut to the marrow. Bonds of trust crumbled as kin and comrades turned potential betrayers. Banquet chatter choked into stifled hush, supplanted by the thud of pounding hearts. Scribes torched their tomes lest a phrase ignite the pyre. The effervescent minds that bloomed under Augustus withered in fear's stranglehold. Mothers schooled their young to muzzle even dreams, dreading a sleep-mumbled treason. The tapestry of Roman camaraderie, woven from bold discourse and fiery debate, frayed to tatters under terror's unyielding boot. Meanwhile, on Capri's balmy shores, Tiberius plummeted deeper into delusion's grip. His visage, never a sculptor's dream, had bloated into caricature, pocked with festering boils and weeping sores, born of ailments and the foul salves he slathered on. Wigs masked his gleaming pate, layers of paint veiled the ruin beneath. The striding general of old now evoked a leprous satyr skulking in his voluptuous den. His suspicions soared to delirious peaks, he force-fed morsels to the condemned before his plate, slumbered amid a thicket of blades even in his innermost lair. The empire's reins slipped ever more to Sejanus, the scheming praetorian prefect who had greased the wheels of his master's foulest whims. For seasons, Sejanus gripped Rome's throat in near-sovereign vice while Tiberius idled on his rock. But even this pact festered in the emperor's bile. In 31 AD, he unleashed a bolt from the blue, engineering Sejanus's cataclysmic fall and butchery with the same sadistic flair he lavished on all quarry. The ensuing bloodbath devoured hundreds, sweeping up any tainted by association. Even the law's ancient shield for the young crumbled as children tumbled beside sires to the sword. In one gut-wrenching saga, a maiden's purity was rent by the headsman himself before her end, for Rome forbade the spilling of virgin blood. The twilight of Tiberius's tyranny crescendoed into unbridled frenzy. In his 70s, his fleshly fires may have dimmed, but his malice blazed fiercer than ever. Death haunted him like a spectre, with daily divinations and the slaying of any seer who dared forecast his curtain. Yet he courted the reaper too, courting peril and scorning his frailty. The recluse who had burrowed into Capri for over a decade now ventured fleeting, venomous raids onto the mainland, sowing chaos like a scythe through wheat. These excursions evoked less royal procession than plague's advance, as hamlets scrambled to shroud their fairest from his prowling shadow. Ancient scribes vied to plumb the nadir of Tiberius's abyss, their pens dripping disdain. Though flourishes may swell the palate, the canvas coheres with grim unity. Tacitus, hailed as the era's truest sentinel, seethes with revulsion at vistas he can scarcely commit to ink, even granting the slant of senatorial grudge and the Roman chronicler's relish for vilifying the vile. The torrent and tenacity of these narrations bespeak a dominion steeped in authentic dread. That so many sprang from pens under later Caesars, with no stake in whitewashing Tiberius, bolsters their bite. What gnaws at the marrow of history is the riddle of a seasoned tactician and steward devolving into such a gorgon. Some invoke power's inexorable toxin, casting Tiberius as Acton's axiom incarnate. Others unearth madness in his soul, perhaps inflamed by cups of wine or the throne's relentless grind. The early blows, divorce's blade, wedlock's barren cage, a son's poisoned pyre, surely warped his core. Yet the most chilling specter is that the beast slumbered within all along, biding for the crown to loose its chains. Today's mind healers might label him with a venomous brew, sadistic traits, paranoid fractures, erotic cruelty. But such dry diagnoses pale against the visceral apocalypse he wrought. This was a soul armed to unleash every shadowed urge unpunished, and he drained that arsenal to its dregs. In Tiberius, We glimpse the abyss when society's leashes snap from one already steeped in savagery. The yield is a parable that reverberates through time's vaults. The Romans themselves felt the miasma wafting from Capri like a foul wind. Legends and murmurs cascaded across the provinces, each iteration more lurid, more laced with dread. Caregivers wielded his name as a hobgoblin to cow the unruly. Scrawled curses marred walls, though their scribes courted the abyss if snared. Even the gilded few who gleaned from the regime sensed a fracture in Rome's spine. The machine churned on, levies gathered, frontiers held, commerce flowed, but a gangrenous decay gnawed at its pulsing core. Faith's realm deepened the outrage. Romans revered their pantheon with fervent awe, and many saw Tiberius's blasphemies as thunderbolts inviting celestial fury. Quakes, deluges, infernos in his epoch were harbingers of godly ire. His perversion of holy rites for base rutting struck as sacrilege unbound. Some arcane cults that thrived under Augustus burrowed into secrecy, lest their mysteries fuel the emperor's fire. The sacred pulse of Rome itself sickened under its helm's poison. The fiscal scars of Tiberius's scourge lurk overlooked but loomed large. Endless seizures bloated the fisc, yet strangled the bold enterprise that forged Roman wealth. Affluent houses buried hoards or squandered them in haste, shunning the spotlight's peril. Ventures stalled as success invited the noose. The delators spawned a leeching bazaar of ruin over riches. Even Capri's indulgences, the villa's sprawl, the watchmen, the endless tide of quarry, siphoned vitality that might have nourished the realm. Diplomacy frayed under the skittish sovereign. Envoys languished years in limbo, weighing if Capri's shores spelled triumph or tomb. Vassal monarchs saw their heirs clutched as phantom guests in Rome, bonds of fealty forged in fear. The Parthians, eternal Eastern nemesis, gaped as the Colossus imploded in purges and passions. Borderlands frayed from the fold, their stewards too harried by self-preservation to steward truly. The forged steel discipline that hammered the empire now rusted from its heart. The era's canvases and verses mirror the gloom. Bards hushed or fled to mythic vales. Chroniclers shied from now, hugging antiquity's safer shores. Sculptors swung to crude erotica for courtly palettes or pallid platitudes to dodge ire. Augustus's renaissance of the muse choked in the venomous air. Even stonework shifted hue, where the first princeps raised shrines and civic boons, Tiberius lavished only on Capri's dens of delight and Rome's vaults of agony. Women's plight in Tiberius's shadow carves a dirge of despair. Amid the legion of ravaged daughters of Eve, patrician dames teetered on razor's edges. Matrons bartered their girls to the throne or tasted oblivion. Spouses of the fallen often joined them in chains or servitude, broods splintered to the winds. The rare titans like Antonia Minor endured through razor vigilance and likely soul-selling pacts. Rome's hallowed matronly veil and wedlock's oath dissolved before imperial appetite. Healing arts and inquiry, which had surged in empire's dawn, stagnated in the mire. Leeches fretted over lust potions and salves for the emperor's woes over wisdom's advance. His stellar fixation crowned quackery over true stargazing. Thinkers shunned probes that might unearth forbidden lore, such thirst could quench in blood. The Hellenic spark of reason dimmed before dread's eclipse. The legions, Rome's unyielding glory, succumbed to the blight. Ranks rose not on valor but on zeal to hunt for the emperor or betray brothers in arms. The Praetorian phalanx, birthed to shield the crown, twisted into the populace's scourge. Warriors who yearned for frontier laurels now hurled innocence from heights or wrung senators' screams. Outpost cohorts clung to efficacy by road and right, but the conqueror's fire that claimed the Middle Sea flickered low. Rome's vaunted equity, once the empire's beacon, curdled to farce. Statutes twisted to the emperor's caprice alone. Lore bowed to whim, if it clashed with Tiberius's thirst, it shattered. Barristers who championed the charge too fiercely found the noose their client. Magistrates raced to damn, lest mercy brand them rebels. The bedrock tenets that would seed Western jurisprudence warped into chains of subjugation. As age gnawed Tiberius, his dread of the assassin's shadow swelled to frenzy. He sampled his tasters' fare with tasters of their own. Watchman-eyed watchman. Thrasyllus clung eternal at his flank, divining doom in avian arcs or vaporous whims. Yet, in bitter jest, his end slithered not from plot but fate's quiet hand, or perchance, as murmurs hinted, a successor's silken nudge. The tyrant who had cowered from death's whisper met it forsaken, bereft even of his vice's cold embrace. Tiberius's fall on March 16, 37 AD, unmasked the loathing he had brewed. Word racing to Rome ignited a riot of jubilation. To the Tiber with Tiberius, the throngs bellowed, baying to hurl his husk into the current like offal. The Senate, unchained at last, balked at his deification, a rite lavished on Augustus. Only Caligula's prod spared him the barest imperial rites, but they rang perfunctory, stripped of the true dirge that shadowed his predecessor's pyre. The clash over Tiberius endures like an open wound. Revisionists murmur that the ancients inflated his sins, that Tacitus and Suetonius slanted through senatorial spite. They tout the realm's steadfast poise and bounty as proof the gears turned true despite his frailties. There's grit in such pleas, the empire endured, and wilder fables may indeed puff the truth. But the avalanche of attestation, the steadfast thread of dread in era's parchments, whispers that embellishments cloak a core of unvarnished nightmare. The soul scars of his epoch rippled long past the pyre. Romans grasped that their princeps could spawn not mere flops, but incarnate fiends. Augustus's scaffold birthed not just the flawed, but the foul. This revelation soured the pact twixt crown and crowd for ages. Heirs to the purple drew wary eyes, their deeds sifted for Tiberian taint. The Senate's spine, snapped beyond mending, never reclaimed its stature. The toxins he brewed, treason's farce, the snitches swarm, vices bleed into verdict, revived under later scourges. For his prey, no grave's grace avenged. Capri's abused fledglings, Rome's racked nobles, clans crumbled on lies, their throes etched not in annals but tallies of terror. Thousands perished in the purge, each cipher a soul snuffed by sovereign lunacy. The spintry melted into myth's void, their dooms guessed in shudders. The ethical gash Rome bore festered generations, if it scarred over at all. His tangible bequest soured likewise. Capri's villas loomed vacant, shunned as plague zones. Later Caesars tiptoed the aisle but fled swift, as if the rocks hoarded contagion. Rome's torment dens crumbled, yet their grounds lingered in infamy. Digs on Capri unearthed the sprawl's splendor, but spare a stark proof of the scroll's screams. Some vaults beg eternal seal. Modern autocrats echo Tiberius in flickers, yet few blend his scepter's sway with such intimate rot. The bloodied 20th birthed beasts, but they honed on polity's pyre or walled vices from view. Tiberius gleams singular, melding throne with thirst, scripting statecraft around his warped whims. He warns of humanity's plunge when bonds shatter. Why did Romans endure this Gorgon 2 decades and a half? Dread's grip was ironclad, defiance danced with death. Yet precedent chained them too. Augustus's bomb of Pax after strife's storm traded liberty for lull, reversal demanded valor terror had vaporized. The Senate's self-yield left no easy reclaim. Lone sparks of revolt flickered but never blazed to blaze. Rome's veneer masked brutality's underbelly, arenas of blood, chains of the bound, the forsaken babe. Tiberius's extremes stretched that spectrum, not snapped it, easing denial as mere excess in the empire's vein. His enablers merit the blackest curse. No lone fiend sustained the storm, he needed hunters for quarry, blades for will, whispers for fuel, sycophants to cloak the foul. Each soul bartered rectitude for scraps, some pleading peril's prod, others gorging on the grief. These underfiends often slinked and scathed post-mortem, their spoils tucked in shadows. The ripple beyond Rome's pale chilled allies' spines. Barbarian kin, once awed by the eagle's arc and lore, pondered if this vaunted civility masked mere regimented rage. The moral mantle Rome donned as law's lighthouse dimmed. Conquest's call met stiffer spines from folk versed in Capri's chill, questioning the fold's worth. Faiths and philosophies birthed or bloomed in this void chased solace amid the storm. Stoic fortitude, prizing souls steal o'er fate's lash, soothed the subjugated. Eastern enigmas vowing beyond life balm drew the despairing, justices well run dry here. The soil tilled for faiths to quake the old order's roots. Tiberius's venom, unwittingly, seeded Rome's soul shift. His ink's void screams loudest, the hush of the era's quills. When scribes dared etch truth, decades had blurred, leaning on clandestine codices, oral phantoms, purged ledgers. This chasm veils the full frenzy, uncounted vanished, tales too raw for even ancients' grit. The quiet indicts as fiercely as the cry. For us now, Tiberius transcends chronicles chill, a mirror to civility's swift skid to savagery sans power's curb. It bears how dread freezes the just in stasis, how foul webs snare all in silk. Most harrowing, it unveils monstrosity not in alien fiends, but our shared clay, primed for the spark. His demise brought gasp of air, not cure. Caligula proved the plague not one man's. The scaffold's flaws, one soul's sway o'er multitudes, lingered, birthing beasts amid the benign. Rome's best boast, few matched his blend of stewardship and sin. Earth's whispers tease but deny the scrolls. Capri's stones yield luxury's husk, excesses echo, yet no damning relic of the right. This void fuels deniers, but voids prove naught. Tiberius held means and motive to scour his stains, cliff toss leaves no bone, the pyre no print. His flesh and mind's maze captivates still. Sores and scars whisper venereal bite, fueling a spiral of rot. Leads quiet creep from pipes and flagons might have frayed his frayed edges. Yet such sparks fan, not birth, the blaze of calculated cruelty that crowned his crown. Coinkeepers puzzle at the rift, amid the dread, trade thrived, levies flowed, roads endured. This schism spotlights how behemoths lumber on under beasts. It prods the thorn of collusion, how scribes and stewards toiled while screams rent the ether. His sins weave on the sex's merit's mournful gaze. Though he ravaged all, the realm's frail damsels and young drew easiest prey. Law's scant veil shredded before his throne, norms bowed. Matrons beholding heir's horror, vestals rent, highborn to chattel, this crimson thread laces every lay. Few tyrants mirror him stark. Nero's pageants outdid in spectacle, not system. Caligula's flash lacked his ice. In villainy vault, Tiberius carves niche, the steward who oiled the state for self's abyss. His shadow sweetened air's shine. Against his black, the bland gleamed gold. The trauma-tuned thresholds low, neglect trumped nightmare, steadying the seat. He unwittingly braced the throne by plumbing its pit. His epic's riddles vexed Rome's sages' eons. If God's balanced scales, why bloom such blight so long? If good reaped gold, vice thorns, why thrive the thorn on the good's grave? These thorns pierced old faiths, birthing quest for fresh light, seeding the soul's quake. For survivors, the brands burned lifelong. Senators damning kin for skin bore guilt's unyielding yoke. Guardians failing the guarded haunted endless nights. The mute masses shouldered silent sin. That cohort, forged in the forge of fear, scarred the city's sinew for spans untold. His era's icons trace a grim arc youth's busts beam stern nobility, later, if any, veil truth in gloss. Marble's mask jars text's truth, a chasm of charade, dignities drape o'er depravity's dance. Capri's lure today tempts with torment. Azure allure draws hordes, yet guides skim the stain. Villas pose as relics, not graves. This gloss, commerce's coin, risks erasure of the anguish etched in stone. Each cliff's vista whispers of the hurled, beauty's bloom forever bruised. His legal venom lingered like blight. Maestas's maw swallowed all, blueprint for tyrant's lash. Torments to wring, young to reap, clans to crush, all normalized norm's death. Even the just struggled to uproot the rot once rooted. Youth's forge shifted in his wake. Rhetoric's fire for forum's fray yielded to shadows, dodged the glare, fawn sands fall, sent the storm. Virtue's lore, civic call turned lethal in a realm where truth threatened, duty doomed to blood. The bond trade darkened. Beyond toil's tide, a niche bloomed for Capri's call, youths prized by type, stalked by slavers. Corsairs cashed in on the catch. Silk's path bore silk and sorrow alike. Nature's scribes note Capri's cruel jest, paradise's frame for hell's play. Villas vaults awe still, feats of form on frail ground. Beauty's embrace of beasts' lair jars, proving foulness festers in Eden's heart. Astrology's snare merits the glare. Thrasyllus's ilk lent starry sanction to slaughter, cosmic cloak for carnage. Planets doomed patricians, dates decreed defilement. Lore's twist to lash adds evil's edge. Healers' hells, prop the pain for more pain, salve the scourge that scarred the pure, probe the young for lust's lens. Some stood, some stooped, coerced or cloaked, the stain-scarred souls, echoing ethic's eternal bind. The toll on blood and breed defies count. Beyond the slain and scarred, lineages snapped, unborn. Nobles web, slim already, shredded wholesale. Rome's loss in loom and lore, beyond measure. Some murmur this cull of the crest hasted the Colossus's creak. Verses veil in the vice, codes and cloaks for the keen, myths masking now's moan. Subtlety sharpened the tongue, but silenced symphonies, burned books, unborn bards. The hush howls as the hymn. His stones stamp, Capri's crowns, triumphs of toil on torment's turf. Brilliance bent to baseness, the aqueduct's grace for the abused. Rome's dual soul peaks here, genius blind to the gore. For virtue's vanguard, Tiberius gleams pure poison. No creed or conquest cloaked his cuts, he craved the cry for its own cruel song. No veil of greater good, raw relish in ruin. Simpler to damn, yet deeper the dread, evil for evil's thrill, sans excuses shield. Survival's craft in the storm-schooled souls for spans, prate without point, cheer sans chain, endure the eclipse. Trust's thread frayed forever, republic's roar yielded to whisper's wail. Even post-pyre, suspicion stalked like shade. Faith's fray, some shattered altars, God's gaze gone blind. Others sought veiled vows of vengeance beyond. Some wove woe into the weave divine. Christ's call, clear in curse of such curse, swelled in the scar, justice's jewel in the void. The scourge's ledger, villa's vault, guard's gold, whisper's wage, praise price, all sapped the sinew. Wealth's waste, what might have beens in the mire, endless echo. Warlore's knot, the field fox turned den dweller, fraying his forge. No surge of sword, frontiers faint fade as gaze turned in. The strategos as steel soured to the scourge's script, roles rip masks, or power perverts the player. Wines whisper, ancients attest the flood, fleshes fall and frayed rain. Some see the cup's curse as core, conscience's cull. Symptom or spark, it stripped the scant stay his throne left. Ravish as right crested cruel. Conquest's claw in calm's cloak, the web of woe, child's curse crowned, these birthed a brave new baseness. Ancient's arms wielded it wild, he wove it to warp. His harvest's hue, Rome and rock reaped richest, but veins veined the vast. Stewards sniffed for sport in shires, sails bore the bound with bales. The taint trickled from throne to turf, proving pinnacle's poison pervades the pile. Tyrants tally, snitch and sham, blades whim, echoes in epochs, but his blend of polity's press with private's pit stands stark. Most mask the man from the mace, he merged, scripting self to state. The thriver's traits, minds keen, morals void, names in the notch, careers carved in cries. They outlasted, toxins tuned for tomorrow's throne. Laws loom, his warp woke the ward, bonds for the bound, right o'er raw rule, equity's edge honed on his horror. Though imperial ice chilled the cure. The ends echo, banalities bite amid the blaze. Trades tick, fields furrow, drills drum, norm nestled nightmare. Fishers lay amid the lament, life's lull in the lash's lee. As we seal this saga's shroud, queries quake beyond the quartz. What forges the fiend? What webs wake the worm? Why the worthy withhold? Not mere musty musing, but beacons. Tiberius's tomb seals not the storm, powers hoard, duty's drought, cruelty's creep lurk in every age. Capri calls still, cliffs caress o'er the cast. Few fathom the fall. Life's loom onward, but lapse invites the lash. Each dawn's die o'er the deep dies the doom. In nature's noble and man's nadir, our arc arches from apex to abyss. Tiberius breathed last on March 16, 37 AD, 77 winters worn. Some swear Macros mattress muffled him, others, fate's faint or solitary sigh. Key, unbowed, unbent, scheming slays from the slab. His final rasp, for some scribes, suspicion's snarl. He perished as he prowled, shadowed, savage, swallowed by the self-spun snare. Heir to the orb's orb, he bequeathed it bled, broken, begging balm. Rome's roar, Tiber to the Tiber. More than malice's moan, a ritual rinse for the realm's raw rift, 2 decades dread in the drink. But some blots bite too bone-deep for brine's balm. The eagle endured epochs, summits and slumps, but the spirit split from his stroke scarred eternal. In him, Rome glimpsed its gutted core, and that gaze, once gained, grips forever. Time tallies Tiberius not as flawed crown, but foul flesh. Though quibbles query quirk and quest, the doom endures from dawn's day, scepter sand's soul spawns the spawn, our clay cradles craters that cynics scarce credit. His tag twined with twist in antiquity's tongue, shorthand for sovereign supreme sin. 2 millennia on, the tether holds, a nod to night's notch on the now. Yet the keenest kernel? Not his alone, but ours. Thousands tune the terror, yield o'er yell, gain o'er grace, breath o'er bold. Each hurl from height, vote for the void, hunt for the helpless, flesh that chose. One's outrage, how vast, needs the many's mute mesh. In that mesh, the menace and the missive, foul of such span springs not solitary, but systemic, the everyday's enablement. As we quench this quenchless quench of history's heart of dark, recall, civility's cloak cracks crisp. Tiberius unveils the under the ermine, the making of man to monster by might. His span screams the steep toll of throne untamed, the deeps of doom in the heart's hold. Let memory's mantle not molt, lest the last's lash anew. The Tiberius toll told through time's tide and past. Each heir's horror hued by his hue. Each excess evoked the isle's ice. Romans reeled, Caesars could curdle. That knowing knotted crown and crowd anew. Faith's fracture from Augustus's fix proved war's woes were the kinder kin. His hugest hurt. Hope's hemlock. He hammered home, stride no sure, civility can claw back, law and lore no lock on the lurking low. Senators of statecraft sank to simper. Legions lions to lust's lackeys. Justice's jewel to jailer's jest. In Tiberius, not one wretch's wreck, but all arches ache to the archfiend. Yet in the night, glimmers gleam. Tiberius toppled. His horror, how hewn, held no heaven's hold. Rome rallied, rearing the right amid the rot. Spirit spark, though scorched, stayed. Scribes like Tacitus and Suetonius steeled the saga, victims veil not veiled full. In the ink's indictment, rebellion's root, future folk forewarned, the foul forestalled. Tiberius tolls, civility's cost, watch without cease, gainst the gloom in our grain and grid. Power penned, laws loop on all, the frail fenced from the fierce. Blood-bought briefs bind every breath. While will wields o'er will, the wicked waits. Ward with recall, wisdom, weaves to wall the warp from whim to woe. As Tyrrhenian twilight tints the tide, the same sheen that sheened his sins, we shoulder the scroll and the stewardship of shade. Capri's crowds crave the charm, but clutch the chill. Scholars sift the saga, seeing splendor's seat on sand. Every folk fathom freedom's forge on fragile fence, gainst the foul. Tiberius tombs, but the brew that brewed him brews, biding bold unless we bolt the breach. In the end's etch, Tiberius towers as time's tersest terror of our taint. His helm unveils vices vast when vault voids the vice. But it bears too, foul, how fierce, folds final. Tiberius tumbled, loathed, lorn. Name mused, nod none. The realm he rent rang centuries. The soul he sought to snap surged. In that tug, twixt our tarnish and tenacity, history's horror and its hope entwine. Recall the rift to root the rise.